Pop filters, who needs them? Well, if you're trying to record audio, the answer is you. So it's come to my attention, and by come to my attention, I mean I noticed immediately, but other people are also pointing out that the pop filter that comes with the Neat King B2 just isn't that good. It's a shame it doesn't work that well, because it looks really nice. It pops right on into one neat little package, and you don't even really notice that there's a pop filter there. It's got this nice little honeycomb pattern on it, which made a lot more sense back when the microphones were supposed to look like bees. But you might notice it looks really see-through because there's only one thin little piece of mesh fabric between the two pieces of plastic. We're going to do some tests in a minute so you can see how effective this pop filter is. But first, I'm going to show you a cheap, easy, almost invisible modification you can do to this pop filter that'll make it a lot more effective. This works on the Neat King B2, the King B1, and the Neat Worker B. The Neat Worker B2 doesn't come with a pop filter, but if you happen to have one of these, it'll work on that as well. All you need to do this is some GutterFoam and a cutting tool. GutterFoam is this loose, open-cell, spongy material that you get at the hardware store. It's meant to stop leaves and stuff from clogging up your gutters. For $7 or $8, you can get a piece big enough to do this mod like 100 times. Try to get a piece that's relatively clean. Okay, step 1, from the thicker part of the foam, go in and draw a circle that's the right diameter to fit just inside the pop filter. And yeah, black Sharpie's not the easiest thing to see, but that's okay. Step 2, with a utility knife, cut around the circle and go in just deep enough to fit behind this pop filter. In step 3, using the knife, come in and slice in sideways, slowly, to remove the chunk of foam that you need. Now you might be thinking, wouldn't it just be easier to cuff a slice and then trace a circle onto it? Well, you can do that, but this gutter guard isn't quite big enough to fit behind the entire pop filter, so you'll have a few empty gaps around the sides, which isn't actually that big of a deal. All you're doing is cutting out a circle of foam. Don't overcomplicate it. Once you have that foam removed, you can use some scissors to kind of make it a little bit neater and to trim it down to exactly the right size. See? I told you it was easy. In case it's not obvious, you put the foam behind the pop filter and you clip the pop filter back onto the microphone. Granted, these things don't always like to clip together. If you're looking in from the side, you can see the foam in there, but otherwise it's completely invisible. It's pretty much perfect so long as it works and it doesn't make you sound bad. So it's time to give it a test. Let's put it up against some other pop filters and see how well it works. All right, so we're gonna be testing these pop filters with the Neat King B2 right here at the workbench. Acoustically, this space is a basement, and my recorder is the Zoom F3. I'm going to be facing directly into the microphone, which is not good mic technique, but I'm trying to prove a point here. I'll be reading a really stupid plosive tongue twister. We're going to be testing to see how effective the pop filters are, as well as to see if they change the way my voice sounds in any way. So first up, we have the bare King B2 with no pop filter whatsoever. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. Before we snap on the pop filter, because it doesn't like to come off, I've got a couple more things to try. Next up is the cheap double-layered nylon pop filter that everybody has. This one came bundled with a $35 USB microphone. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. Next up, which is the one I like to use, it's a metal mesh pop filter with a bunch of that GutterFoam glued to the back. It doesn't look that good, and I don't care. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. Now, if you're wondering why I glued some ugly foam to this pop filter, let's rip it off and I'll show you. Hooray for hot glue. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. Something else I've tried is to add a thin layer of GutterFoam between the two fabric layers of one of these cheap nylon pop filters, which doesn't even look that bad. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. I should have had ChatGPT write me a better paragraph. Next up is the Neat King B pop filter on its own with no foam inside. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. It always feels bad to pull that off. Finally, last up, King B2 pop filter with the foam inside. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers, popping them one by one, producing potent plosive bursts that permeated the pristine podcast. SparkYo, perched perfectly, poised to prevent pesky pops, positioned the pop filter precisely, presenting a protected passage for Peter's playful pronunciations. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. Peter Piper picked a peck of pickled peppers. The results should speak for themselves, and I, for one, really like this modification that I invented and shared with you guys. If you got something out of this, please consider watching some of my other videos. I've been SparkYo, and I'll see you next time.